Coming up next on The Voice of Alabama Politics, Ivey to build prisons. Also, the V-Team takes a look at consulting contracts. And it's time to send Mike Hubbard to prison. The crazy babies always go out crying. Bye, Mike. All this and much, much more coming up next on The V. Welcome to The Voice of Alabama Politics, where we tackle the tough issues so you have the hard facts. I'm your host, Bill Britt, and as always, I'm joined by the V-Team. Welcome all.
Hello.
Welcome.
Jonathan, you're becoming a regular.
Well, I enjoy it. It's great. Thank you for having me.
Jack, you are irregular as usual.
Yeah. Actually, lately it's been real good.
Well, we're starting session, so everything's downhill from there, right?
Yeah.
So about 16, 17 days, right?
Something like that.
Yeah. Well, Kay Ivey, we went to a press conference this week. I sat there with Governor Kay Ivey, and she is determined to build 3 new men's correctional facilities, Susan, come hell or legislative high water, isn't she?
She's absolutely set on doing it, and I'm telling you, she's going to find a way to get it done, regardless of what the legislature thinks about it, I think.
Well, you know, Jonathan, Governor Ivey has the option of building these prisons without the legislature's approval. She can do it under what's called a lease build agreement. She has the authority to do that. You know, we ask her about, well, the legislature appropriates, gives her the money to do these things. She said, well, the legislature appropriates, the executive executes. I'm getting ready to execute. Reminds me of the president, doesn't it?
Well, it kind of does. Yeah, I actually was going to say, it was a lot like Donald Trump. He's like, if you don't do what we need done, I'll just do it myself. Now, in looking at the state legislature, it's probably not the best idea to go around their back and order them around and boss them around because, they control the budget and they control a lot of things that the governor does. And so I don't think I would do that. But I think by asking the legislature first and saying, here's my plan, I have a great plan, I just need your backing, I think it's the right way to do it. But if they don't do it, we have to do something with prisons. So, I can't say that I would blame her for using her authority,
Well, and Jack, listen, and nobody wants to build prisons, right? I mean, we don't want to build prisons.
No, people don't put a lot of priority on prisons and prison conditions. But if we're ever to, and this is the liberal side of me, faint liberal side of me, prisons, yes, they're punitive, but there are some prisoners who you can probably actually reform.
Right.
But under our current conditions, there's nothing reformatory about our prisons. They're all punitive. And I think for the governor to take the bull by the horns, considering the fact we're under the very heavy breath of a federal judge, we have to do something. And kudos to her for saying we're going to get this fixed.
And a good portion of what they are planning, and Commissioner Dunn emphasized this, is to turn this more back into an educational reform type situation for those who want it. Now, not all criminals are going to want to be reformed or educated or whatever, but they are, under this plan, going to give them the opportunity should they need it.
Well, something we failed to realize quite a bit is right now, most of our prisons have the most violent criminals in a concentration.
Right.
So what they want to do is build 3 men's prison for the level 4 and level 5, which are the most violent offenders. And it's really about public safety. Number one, you want to keep them away from people. The other thing you want to do is keep them from killing the correctional officers. And third, you want to keep them from killing themselves. I mean, we have a moral fiduciary responsibility to care for them because we have incarcerated them. And listen, this is why government exists, to do the things that the public doesn't want to do or can't do.
And one of the things that I found nice, they are also addressing Judge Thompson's concerns. One of these facilities is going to be, there's going to be a part of it that's dedicated to nothing but the health, the aging health, and the mental health of the prisoners. So they kind of section them off and give them their own part of the facility to be able to address those things.
We've only got about 30 seconds, but Jack, we've had 12 suicides in the last 13 months, mainly with prisoners with mental health issues being in solitary confinement.
Yeah, and that's, I'm all for solitary confinement if it's justified. If people are violent, you absolutely cannot keep them in the regular population.
Yep.
But some of those, like you've said, are mentally ill, and putting them in solitary confinement is probably not the answer. So.
Well, I have toured 3 prisons.
We have.
And anybody that's toured the prisons knows that they are inhumane, and we can do better as a state, and we must do better. I want to move on now to the things that make you want to wrap your head in duct tape, Jack, because it's going to explode. Danny Garrett and Representative Danny Garrett and several guys that are in the state legislature sit on the contract review board, sent a letter. They got a contract that goes back to this report we did on the Alabama Real Estate Commission wanting to hire lobbyists. So they get a contract for around $90,000, and it's for a consultant, but the consultant happens to be a lobbying firm. So they write Brian Taylor, who's Kay Ivey's chief legal advisor, and say, is this okay if we hire lobbyists when Kay Ivey's executive order says you shouldn't be hiring lobbyists? Brian Taylor sent him back a letter. You'll love this. If you take off your lobbyist hat and put on a consulting hat, you're cool, all right? If you take off your lobbying hat and put on a lawyer hat, you're cool. If you take off your lobbying hat and put on a legislative advisor's cap, you're cool.
That's just a BS way around giving lobbyists jobs with state agencies, which Fob James signed an executive order prohibiting. Governor Ivey's done the same thing. It's a no-brainer in my opinion. Don't hire a lobbying firm or a firm whose principal chore and mission is to lobby to consult with your agency. It smells bad.
I mean, Jonathan, just the logic here opens the door for just all kinds of mischief.
Well, this is Mike Hubbard's type logic, okay? And I agree exactly with what Jack said. This is just another way that they can get the cesspool of Montgomery and get more people making money. If you've got a state agency or a state commission, then the head of that commission or agency can go to the state house and say, hey, these are things we need. They can meet with their local legislators. They don't need to spend money, our tax money, 95% of the time, to spend with a lobbying firm to go do something that they could do themselves.
And Susan, we only got about 22 seconds here, but I'm saying it's not that the lobbyists are necessarily bad,
no,
but you're opening up this broad thing where they can now be anything they want to be.
It's just, I mean, why have the ethics laws? Why bother?
Exactly.
Why don't you just take them out? You don't have to have your little committees. We don't have to argue about Steve Marshall. We don't have to argue about lobbyist consultant. Just get rid of them. Get rid of those. Get rid of the ones regarding lobbying, and it'll all be done.
Well, lawmaker asked me, how would you fix it, Britt? And I'd say, if you are a registered lobbyist, you cannot be a consultant too. That's right. It'll be one or the other. Anyway, we're going to leave it right there. You're watching The V, the voice of Alabama politics. We'll be right back with more news and analysis.
Black History Month is huge. It's a way for us to reconnect with our history.
Continue to celebrate and acknowledge the immense amount of contributions that Black people have made.
Black History Month is a celebration of culture.
Another opportunity for everyone to remember that we're all human.
And to have a month that reminds people that Black history is American history.
More than just having names and numbers and dates that are in a book.
To remember how important it is to be Black.
I think that the importance of Black History Month is that if you don't know where you came from, you're not going to be prepared for where you're going.
We all stand on the shoulders of somebody else. If I stand tall, it's because I'm standing on the shoulders of those who came before me.
Black history.
More than a month.
What are you doing today, babe?
I thought I'd head down to the lake with the guys, do a little fishing. Of course, none of us will be wearing our seatbelts. I'll lose control of the truck, wrap it around a tree, and kill us all.
Okay.
Drive safe, Alabama. A message from your Alabama Department of Transportation.
Welcome back to the V, the voice of Alabama politics. Susan, a few months ago, the environmental community was rejoicing because they thought they had gotten some bad guys that had worked for EPA for violating the Alabama Ethics Act. As we reported right after the two men were indicted, there were a lot of problems with the charges against them. The two men, Scott Phillips, a former EPA commissioner, and Trey Glenn, until his indictment, was Donald J. Trump's Southeast Regional Advisor or Administrator for the EPA. They've been charged with several ethics violations. The problem is, which we saw immediately, and now the defense attorneys have seen, is that there are some procedural problems with this case. Now, first off, when Tom Albritton and Cynthia Probst Ralston brought the charges against Mr. Glenn and Mr. Phillips, they said that it was the district attorney out of Jefferson County, Anderton, who asked them to help prosecute the case. Now we know that they asked Anderton. So there is, all of a sudden, that's the beginning of several misstatements or maybe just flat out lies that were told to put these two in the hot box.
This is a cluster of mistakes. I got to tell you, there's mistakes everywhere throughout this. But if you take a closer look, you take a couple of steps back, the organization you were talking about is GASP, the environmental organization, who happens to be headed by Stacey Probst, right?
Yeah.
Right. All right, look a little further down. Notice that Albritton's right-hand person and attorney, Cynthia Probst Ralston, is her sister. Because we've all asked, why did they want this so fast? Why did they want this to happen so fast that they were able to want to go around the laws to be able to make this happen? Well, that kind of puts it in a nutshell to me right there. But, and it's legal for a DA to ask the Ethics Commission to help them and get involved in a grand jury, but they went around that. They asked the DA to ask them help.
Wouldn't the normal procedure be the Ethics Commission would ask the Attorney General to prosecute a case?
Sure.
Rather than going to a county DA?
Well, and this is interesting because Matt Hart, he's one of the representatives for Trey Glenn. This is his first case ever as a
on the defense
side. And it's very interesting that he's there because he understands how the process should work. What should have happened in a normal case, GASP referred a complaint to the Ethics Commission, right? So the complaints are then investigated and referred to the Ethics Commission, right? That's why we have them.
That's right.
They didn't do that, Jonathan. They went straight to a DA. They went straight to a grand jury. I mean, Mr. Anderton said he'd never even heard of the case.
Well, I happen to know, Mike Anderton, and I don't know the specifics. I haven't asked him directly, but I do know that, I believe him in this affidavit that he's put out. I know him as a person, and he is a person of character. And if he said, hey, they came to me to ask me to do this case, I believe him 100%. But the question remains, why is the Ethics Commission trying to go to a local DA when the Attorney General's office has already said, hey, we don't really want to get involved in this? I mean, it's a mess. And what What is the real? There's always a reason behind everything that these people do.
And it has never come before the Ethics Commission itself.
Yeah.
So usually what it does is it comes to the Ethics Commission, it goes before the Ethics Commission, they vote on it, determine if there's probable cause, then they have the option of going to the DA or going to the Attorney General.
That's right. They didn't do that.
But they went around all that.
So there was never an Ethics Commission hearing on this case.
No,
it was just two individuals at the Ethics Commission who arbitrarily referred it to a DA instead of the AG, and it just so happened that the woman that ran the complaining entity is the sister of the woman working for the Ethics Commission.
There you go, Jack.
I mean, the woman, former director.
Makes me want to gasp.
Director's sister. I thought that smelled gas, not gas, I'm sorry. The former director of gas, her sister is the one who took it before the grand jury.
I mean, what's going on here? I mean, there's something. Who's to gain from what?
Well, Matt Hart and Bill Athenas, another federal prosecutor who's representing Glenn, I bet if they get to discovery, they're going to find all kinds of little exchanges between the sisters. The sisters of the traveling indictments.
And believe me, Matt Hart...
Good luck with this case.
Yeah, Matt Hart intimately knows the prosecutorial misconduct rules.
You know what? And they've charged that for him for 20 years, and never once did it stick. But the thing is, Jack, it doesn't. Even if these guys are crooks, doesn't matter. You got to follow the law, right?
Absolutely.
That's the
and the procedure.
And the AG, the Attorney General's office in the state of Alabama, has looked at this and went, oh, no, too many mistakes. We're not touching it.
That should tell you something.
It's bad.
That should tell you something if the Attorney General's office is like, hey, if they're supposed to have an open and shut case and these guys have really done something wrong and the procedure is so bad, I mean, it makes you wonder, where did some of these folks go to law school?
And let us not forget that Albritton went to AL.com and gave them the entire story before these two guys even knew they were indicted.
Right. It was we reported that they didn't even know they were indicted.
They woke up having breakfast, drinking their coffee, and oh my God, I'm going to prison.
Then their lawyers called and said, okay, we see this. Can we let our guys turn themselves in? We're like, oh, no, you can't do that till next week because the paperwork's not done yet.
Right, exactly.
I mean, this is just all over the place.
This is amateur hour +1. Anyway, we only got about a minute and a half. I want to switch on to another subject. Dale Marsh, Senator Dale Marsh, last weekend, said that he was seriously considering running for the Senate. Jack, what do you think?
I think he's seriously thinking about running for the Senate.
Is there an echo in here?
But I think Dale's got an uphill climb with Bradley Byrne in the race, who, that puts Bob Riley in the bind. Who's he going to be for? I mean, he's going to be for somebody. He's going to maybe he'll hedge his bets. And you got a name out there named Will Ainsworth, thinking about running, who's much younger by 15 years than all these other people who are thinking about running. He looks good. He just won a statewide race, a tough race. He's young enough to build seniority. I mean, somebody to seriously look at.
And people like Will. And I've also heard they're concerned that Gary Palmer, Jonathan, might jump in.
That's what I've heard as well. Gary's my representative, and I look at the press of Bradley Byrne and Gary Palmer and things that they've been putting out. I've been watching their social media. They've been putting more and more out on every issue, whereas Gary Palmer used to not speak on every issue, and neither did Bradley Byrne. Now they speak on every issue and issue a statement on every issue so that they can be in people's news feeds.
And another guy who's doing everything in his power to get his name out there is Mo Brooks.
Yeah, I think, but I want to go back to Marsh here for just a second. I think he may have some problems in that during the Roy Moore thing in that primary, he got right up to the line and said he was running, and the next morning at 6:30, he got up and said, I'm not. So it's going to make donors a little bit.
We have to leave it right there. You're watching The V, the voice of Alabama politics. We'll be right back.
Hey man, what are you doing today?
Playing the game. Thought I'd go out for a drive later maybe. Text some friends while I'm doing it. Scroll through social media. Kill a family at 4 head-on collision.
Cool, man.
Drive safe, Alabama. A message from your Alabama Department of Transportation.
The
The Energy Institute of Alabama promotes reliable, affordable, and clean energy to help grow our economy, create high-paying jobs, and build public support for Alabama's energy industry. Access to clean, affordable energy continues to be an issue of vital importance in the halls of government and around the kitchen tables across our nation. The Energy Institute of Alabama is the best source of energy industry information and how it affects households across the state, from convenient energy production to alternative fuels to solar power and beyond.
Welcome back to The V, the voice of Alabama politics. You know, Jack, we hear people say all the time, we're a nation of laws and not of men, and that the law trumps politics. And then you look, this sorry fella, Mike Hubbard, was convicted of 12 counts of felony public corruption nearly 3 years ago. And just in the last few months, it finally made it to the Court of Criminal Appeals. And they didn't want to rule on it for 2 years, basically, and then the Supreme Court didn't hear it at all because Lynn Stewart, the former, Supreme Court justice, didn't want to mess with Mike's buddies. Tom Parker's in there. I think Tom Parker's going to do something. But why is it that the wealthy politicos like Hubbard get to stay out of jail for almost as much time as they're going to get in jail?
I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. And, Tom Parker has never been known for being expeditious. In fact, he's been behind on his cases a lot as a justice. Hopefully as chief, he'll get moving. Yeah, this thing's gone on way too long. It's gone, if it were some murder or something, he'd have been a long time ago put in prison.
Yep.
And public corruption is, do you want to send a guy that didn't hurt anybody physically to jail, but he hurt a lot of people financially?
Oh, to use one of your words, au contraire.
Yeah, I understand.
He destroyed lives they were nothing.
Didn't help me in my business any.
No.
And we've given up keeping count of how many cases the Supreme Court has ruled on, got off the ticket, that were adjudicated after Hubbard.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
We've given up keeping count.
Well, and I think people, and Jack, I'm just playing with here, but people forget how mean and vindictive Hubbard was. He would destroy people just because he could. Mm-hmm. Not only did he use government to enrich himself, Jonathan, he made like $1 million in 1 year off of his trading off being speaker. But not only did that, he destroyed anybody that got in his way. And that's, the FBI says that public corruption is the #1 threat to our society.
It really is, because it's like racketeering. And that's exactly what Hubbard, the things that he did were racketeering style. We were on the other end of that with advertisers. I mean, there were things that happened with us. We've seen it firsthand. I saw it firsthand when I was running in my PSC race. Certain organizations that would normally give money were told not to give money. And I knew exactly probably who it was. Pretty much think it was Hubbard. But why not just serve your time? I know you're appealing, but it's been, 3 years.
Yeah.
I mean, it's time. Anybody else, just like Jack said, a murderer, anybody else would have already gone. They would have had at max a year for the decision to be made. And it's still 3 years later and he is sitting there. And I believe it's unfair to everybody else we've incarcerated, guilty or not guilty. Everybody else we've incarcerated, this is completely unfair to them.
Keep in mind that this October, it will be 5 years since he was indicted.
Well,
5 years.
It's a political hot potato, but there was nothing unclear about Alabama's ethics laws. In fact, his own staff, if I recall, testified against him, saying,
they did.
We knew it was wrong, and we know Mike knew it was wrong.
Because they told him it was wrong, and he did it anyway.
And he did it anyway. Right. So it's not like it was some subconscious thing or some unintentional thing. He intentionally violated the ethics law.
The one that you're talking about, he violated it 12 times. He voted 12 times on that bill with Josh Blades standing right beside him, basically in tears saying, don't do it, don't do it, don't do it. It's illegal.
As a legislator, he was making what, 5,000, 6,000, 10,000 a month from a gas company?
Southeastern Alabama gas company.
As a consultant, that is that is atrocious. That is absolutely atrocious. And Facebook, please stop suggesting Mike Hubbard to be my friend, please.
Yes, and keep in mind now, Brian Taylor has just opened this all back up as the consultant again.
Well, you know, Brian Taylor was the lawyer who was able to, out of thin air, find that a constitutional amendment in Macon County was illegal after it had been in place for about 3 or 4 years.
He was the author of the ethics laws, wasn't he?
He did write some of those ethics laws.
Now he said,
what were we thinking?
Ways to get around them here.
You know, but the thing that's really, really bothersome is that, and listen, I'm not being judgmental. The Republicans, Democrats, all do it. There are people that did not want Mike Hubbard prosecuted and still do not want him to go to jail because he's a Republican.
And because they funded him.
Yeah.
And
he funded, he funded them.
But we can't vilify one side's crooks and protect the other side's crooks. If they're crooks, Jack, they're crooks. We just ought to call it. So we got to get off this jersey mentality.
Yeah.
You know, everybody that wears my jerseys, okay, everybody. I mean, we still got the head of the House Ethics Committee, Jack, still thinks that Mike was wrongly prosecuted. The House Ethics Chair, Mike Ball, thinks that Mike Hubbard
the bastion of integrity, Mike Ball.
Should go free.
I'm sorry, Ball, but 12 jurors, not politicos, 12 jurors
in Mike's hometown.
Of his peers in his hometown found him guilty 12 times.
Well, it is this guy reigned over the most corrupt orgy that I've ever seen. And he needs to just go to jail. We need to be done with him. You know, of course, this crazy thing is they don't want to do anything until Mike goes to jail. They're still afraid of him, Jonathan.
It's crazy. And, you know, and that's what is beyond me is how does he still have any influence or power at being now a convicted felon? He's convicted. He just hasn't served his time.
I guess, Jack, they're afraid of those damn zombie apocalypse, him coming back from the dead, right?
Maybe. Who knows?
I don't know.
Just, you know, main thing to me, I'm not all that wrapped up about putting him in jail. I just don't want him around the political process where he can terrorize people that are there to do a good job.
And I would agree, but it's not fair to the other people that have had to go to jail for public corruption or for any other crime. Doesn't matter, any felony. It's not fair to other people that had to go to jail.
The guy that robs a convenience store and the guy that robs the state of Alabama, not one is less of a crook because this one did it with a gun and this one did it with a pen.
Yep.
That's a good point.
Hey, God says that all sins are equal under his eyes. It's the same thing.
Well,
you know, in the justice system, justice is blind, and that's the way it's supposed to work. You're supposed to be treated the same way. Now, you know, a murderer is going to serve a lot more time than a guy in a white-collar crime, but as far as taking them back and treating them equally in the justice system, that's what the system was built.
Well, might we suggest that those justices get off their fat black robes and send Mike Hubbard to jail?
Please.
We're going to have to leave it right there.
All right.
You're watching The V, or you have been watching The V, the voice of Alabama politics. You watch us because we watch them.